Good evening. If you'd like to turn in your Bibles to Titus chapter 2, we're going to be studying from there this evening. It's good to be here with you this evening. I've enjoyed another good day. I was able to take a walk out at the park around the lake down there, and what a beautiful park you guys have here. So that's a nice asset to the community. It's such a beautiful community. I was able to drive around with Carl after Bonnie made us some lunch today. We drove around the city of Barnesville at about 5 miles per hour for about 2 hours. And so I had a good time with Carl, though. If he ever wants to come out of retirement and be a tour guide, then he's your man. You can start a bed and breakfast. You can have, I've got a business plan for you here. But I enjoyed that. I was able to eat dinner with the Helmicks this evening, and so I had a good time getting to know them better as well. And what a pleasant, fun family. I like being with some teens. You know, it makes me feel like I'm at home for just a minute. So it was good to get to know Emma and Katie and Avery. I got all those three right? And Spencer Bliss back there. I don't want to leave him out. All right, it's good to have him there too. You know, Titus chapter 2 says that we should mentor others so that they might adorn the doctrine. And that doesn't sound like a phrase, the idea of adorning the doctrine. That's not a phrase that we use every day. I don't think we go around saying, adorn the doctrine. And so what does that mean exactly? How do I teach someone to adorn the doctrine? What does that mean? Let's take a look at two quick passages in Titus where that term doctrine is used. The first one I want to look at with you is Titus chapter 2 and verse 1. In Titus chapter 2 and verse 1, Paul is writing to Titus. Titus is an evangelist who's been left in Crete so that he can continue to evangelize there. And Paul says, "As for you, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine." So one of the things that we learn is that Titus is to be teaching and preaching sound doctrine. And that involves speaking. He's going to have to preach. He's going to have to speak. He's going to have to teach. Not just any doctrine, but sound doctrine. That word sound was a word that was used in Greek to refer to healthy teaching. If someone has sound health, it means that there's nothing wrong with them. They don't have a headache or a toothache or body aches or stomach pain or any of the other things that indicate unsound health. A person who is sound in health is completely without any health issues. And teaching that is sound teaching is healthy teaching, meaning it's accurate teaching. And that's what Titus was to be teaching. But we learn and see this in Titus chapter 2 and verse 10. It says that as it speaks to servants, they should not be pilfering, but show all good fidelity, that they may adorn the doctrine of God, our Savior, in all things. And so we learn two things from these two passages. Doctrine needs to be spoken. Doctrine needs to be taught. But it would also seem to indicate that doctrine needs to be lived. Doctrine and practicing and adorning the doctrine involves some sort of action. Adorning seems to indicate some sort of action taken. So I want you to see how this word is defined. I want to illustrate it for just a moment, and then I want you to see how it's exemplified in this text. Really a simple text. I kind of use Wednesday night sometimes to just walk through a simple text of scripture so we can understand it and apply it better, just like you would hopefully in a Bible study. But the word doctrine comes from a Greek word, didaskalia. And that Greek word didaskalia means instruction. It means doctrine, learning, or teaching. I want you to think about this word as it's broke down in Greek in its different forms. The Greek word to teach is didasko, okay? To teach. If you didasko, it means to teach. It's the verb form. A didaskalos in Greek is a teacher. When in John 13, verse 13, they call Jesus master teacher, the phrase there is ho didaskalos. And so a teacher, it's the noun form of that Greek word. A teacher is one who teaches doctrine. Didaskalia is what is taught. Okay, so it's the doctrine, it's the teaching. In Latin, you would say doctrine. A lot of times when we think of doctors, we think of people who help us with our health problems. But of course, on the college campuses, a doctor or a professor sometimes is someone who is a teacher. And certainly in the first century, someone who was a doctor, well before they had medical doctors, that referred to the ministers. It referred to the teachers of the Jewish law, the church law. And so the doctor, the doctrine, the didaskalia, the didaskalos, the teacher, the teaching. So doctrine is teaching, but we have another word here, and that word is the word adorn. And that's from the Greek word kosmeo. And the word kosmeo means to put it in proper order. That is to decorate, all right? That's a word that maybe we can associate with a little bit, to decorate something. Specifically, to snuff, to adorn, to garnish, to trim, okay? This Greek root kosmeo is where we get the word adorn. Here's another way that Vines actually defines it. Vines says that it means to arrange or to put in order, okay? Others will say, actually, it means to make beautiful, to make acceptable, to make lovely, to adorn the doctrine of God. And so the sermon tonight is built around really those two words. First of all, the doctrine. We need to know the teaching. But secondly, kosmeo, which is the adornment, the beautifying and the incarnation of that word brought to life in our lives. Well, what does it look like to adorn the doctrine? I want you to kind of see this visually, put it this way. Doctrine is kind of like the skeleton, right? Without the doctrine, you got no bones to your teaching. You've got no skeleton, no shape to your lives. But we need to bring those dry bones to life by putting that doctrine into action. And that process is the adornment of the doctrine, the wearing of it. We've all known people who are smart enough to know the doctrine, but too foolish to see that they didn't show the doctrine in their own lives. And that's what we're trying to emphasize here, that you need to be someone who goes beyond just knowing what God's word says, knowing what the Bible says, and move to become someone who shows it and lives it in your life. Maybe you're familiar with this passage, Ezekiel 37 and verse 4, where Ezekiel says, again, God said to me, Ezekiel saying, God said to me, Ezekiel, prophesy to these bones and say to them, O dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord God to these bones, surely I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. I will bring flesh upon you, cover you with skin, put breath in you, and you shall live. Then you shall know that I am the Lord. Like Israel, who knew God's word, had God's word, there are many Christians who have God's word, but they aren't living it. They need to bring those dry bones to life. They need to adorn those by putting it to action. Let me just illustrate a little bit more how we might use the word adorn and how it was used actually in Greek. You see the two pictures. This is the same girl. The girl on the left is the same as the girl that's on the right here. Adorn is from a word kosmeo, and there's a word that you probably have seen when you walk through a Walgreens or the cosmetic section that comes from that word. And it's the word cosmetic, okay? The word cosmetic in English comes from the Greek word kosmeo, okay? So what is it that cosmetics do? Well, cosmetics take a plain face. And by the way, I think this girl is beautiful, whether she has makeup on or not. I tell my girls that sometimes, right? You have to wear all that, it's fine. But some would think, including my girls and my wife, no, I need to wear some makeup, all right? I've got to have some foundation and some lip gloss and mascara and some eyeliner. And so we need all of that. Why? Because we need to dress our faces up. Sometimes we wear jewelry, right? We feel like we need to dress ourselves up some more, breathe some life into the way that we look. In some people's minds, they say, well, they have beautified themselves through kosmeo. Well, the word adorn was used in that way. It means to decorate, perhaps even decorate yourself with jewelry and makeup and things like that. It was also used to apply to a room. The room on the left, right, is unfinished. It doesn't have any drywall up, and the window hasn't been trimmed out. It doesn't have any lights. It doesn't have the bathroom fixtures that we see in the new one, and the mirrors and all the decorations. Well, the unfinished, unfurnished room, when it gets changed to a furnished room, it gets cosmeoed. It gets adorned, all right? They have made it look beautiful by decorating it. Here's another picture. Sometimes that word cosmeo was applied to headstones or to tombs in the first century. Even Jesus refers to whitewashed tombs in Matthew chapter 23. But the tombs were cleaned, much like these headstones and monuments from a cemetery were cleaned. They were dirty, they were unkept, but someone took the time to carefully clean and adorn them, to cosmeo them, to restore them to their beauty and potential. So they look more orderly, they look more attractive now. You can actually read what is said on the gravestone. Well, here's another one. Maybe you've ever decorated for a wedding or a birthday party. Well, you've cosmeoed the room, right? You've adorned it. You have made it look better. You've added some fabric. You've added some flowers. You've added some lighting. You've dressed it up. As Christians, when that phrase is used, adorn the doctrine, then that's what we've got to do. Just reading the Bible is bland. You can come to Bible study. You can check your name off the box when you're here for worship services. But you've got to live what you hear. And that's what Paul is telling Titus that he's got to teach. Tell people to adorn the doctrine, not just hear it, but be doers of it. We have got to know what adorning the doctrine looks like. The world needs men and women who are embodying the adornment of the gospel and mentoring others. Now, why is it that we need this message? Well, the reason why is because if you aren't living the gospel, then you're leading a pretty unattractive life, right? If you're not living the gospel, then you may just very well be living just like everybody else in the world. What's attractive about that? What would make someone want to be like that? Just kind of like they already are, perhaps. You're dimming your lights if you're not living the gospel. And that's what was going on in Crete. Take a look at Titus chapter 1. I want you to see there's a contrast when you move from Titus 1 to Titus 2. Titus 1 describes what the church and members of the church in Crete look like presently. Titus 2 is going to see what they should be looking like. Titus 1 and verse 10 says this. It says, there are many insubordinate, both idle talkers and deceivers, whose mouths must be stopped. That's right there in Crete. The reason why Paul says, Titus, you need to appoint some elders, because we need some elders who are capable of teaching, because there's people who are saying things that aren't consistent with the doctrine. So we need you to stop their mouths, literally. Look at Titus chapter 1 and verse 12. One of them, a prophet of their own. This is somebody from Crete. This isn't an inspired prophet necessarily, but it's someone who said something that Paul agrees with as being true. Cretans are always liars, evil beasts, lazy gluttons. This testimony is true. What a reputation, right? Have you ever heard somebody say, how do you know when this person is lying? Well, you know, because when their lips are moving, they're lying. Well, if you've ever heard someone described that way, that's the reputation Crete had. Always liars. They're always telling lies. Second reputation they had, evil beast. They're evil. They do bad things. Third reputation, they're lazy gluttons. They don't want to work, but they sure do eat a lot. And the opposite should take place. If you don't work, Thessalonians says, you shouldn't eat. But these people don't work and they do eat. Now, Paul says this is the reputation of people in Crete, and he says, and I agree with it. This testimony is true. I've been to Crete. Paul says, this is what I experienced when I was in Crete. And so I think that's accurate. And then one more description is verse 16. They profess to know God. So they claim they've got a relationship with God and that they're living for God. But he says in works, they deny him. They're not living for God at all. They say it, but they don't live it. He says they're abominable, disobedient, disqualified for every good work. That's a pretty bad description right there of what Christians in Crete were looking like before Titus got there. So what you see in Titus chapter 2 and verse 1 is a transition. Do you see the word but to start off Titus chapter 2 and verse 1, well, that marks a transition. Paul saying, here's their reputation now, but as for you, Titus, speak the things which are proper for sound doctrine. And later, concluding that thought, he says that they may adorn the doctrine of God our Savior in all things. He says, this is how they are, but Titus, you're going to change that. Not just you, but you're going to use God's word to change that in these people who were in Crete. So Titus 2:1 is the pivotal turning point in the letter, where Paul begins to implement what he wants Titus to teach in Crete. Paul's message then is needed in Crete because what they were is not what they needed to be. And so I want to spend the rest of our time, as we think about that, to think about what adorning the doctrine looks like to the various people that are mentioned by Paul in Titus chapter 2. Let's start with where he starts, and we're just going to go in the order in which Paul goes through this chapter. Let's start with older men. What does it look like for an older man to adorn the doctrine? What should we expect of older Christians? Well, here's what Paul says. I'm not making any of this up. This isn't what Josh thinks about older men. This is what Paul says that Titus should be teaching, that older men should be. Older men should be sober, reverent, temperate, sound in faith, in love, and in patience. What do these words mean? Well, very quickly, just a few things to think about. I'm just going to give you a few nuggets throughout all these words. The word sober is a word that means not inflamed with passion. It means not given to wine. And so you would expect an older man to not be someone who is addicted to wine. Another way that it's described, though, is it's someone who is not swayed by the highs and the lows of life. An older man has learned that, you know what, good things happen in life, and let's be careful that we don't get too arrogant and uppity about that. Bad things happen in life, and negative things happen in life, and let's not get too down in the dumps and negative and destructive and distraught when bad things happen. So be sober-minded. Work through it, kind of be even-keeled in your mindset. Older men need to learn to work through the positives and negatives of life with a level-headedness. The next word that's used is the word reverent. That's a word that means dignified. We expect older men to set an example of what it means to be dignified. Another word that gets used is translated as the word honest in Philippians 4 and verse 8, actually. When you see the list of things that we should meditate upon, one of those in the list is translated honest. And so an older man should have integrity and should be honest. Just tell the truth. Just learn that there's no benefit to lying about things. That's something that immature people do. People who are mature learn that it's really important for you to have a reputation of being honest, a person of integrity. Well, the next word that's used here is the word temperate, which also means not given to much wine. It's the opposite of being frivolous and careless. Older men need to not be careless people. Older men are interested in the long-term salvation rather than the short-term highs and the jollies of life. Be temperate. Don't think that you've got to get your highs from things like alcohol or drugs or young women or fast cars. Be temperate. You're someone who is the opposite of careless. Another phrase that's used here is sound in faith. The older Christians should know what they believe, and they should hold healthy convictions. That's what it means to be sound in faith. The older Christian is not someone who's teetering with doubt-forming teachings. There are some people who are always playing the devil advocate, always being the skeptic. Don't be that person. The older man needs to set an example of sticking to what the word teaches and just trusting that that is right. Sound in faith. A second thing in that sound phrase is sound in love. The older men should have a healthy love for their fellow brethren. Older men should overcome youthful pettiness. Sometimes we don't like someone over petty things. This person gave me a weird look. This person didn't talk to me when they left today. Older men, don't be a man. Don't worry about that. Turn the other cheek. Don't let those sorts of things bother you, okay? Overcome. That's the thing that teenagers worry about. We need to get over some of those things. Older men need to be sound in love, and that means don't be envious of other people. Don't be envious because someone has more money than you, or someone has a better position than you, or someone's up here leading and you're not the one that's up here leading, whether it be songs or teaching or whatever it might be. Don't be envious of others. Show people you're sound in love. I still love my brethren and I appreciate them for what they do. Don't be impetuous. That's being sound in love. Exemplify being sound in love. You know, when sometimes we show favoritism, we are not sound in love. If we're showing favoritism to someone because they're kin, or we're showing favoritism to someone because they have money and we don't want to offend the people that have money, that's not being sound in love. That's being partial. Part of being sound in love is being impartial to all, regardless of race, economic status, and all those other categories that we might put people in. Be sound in patience. We need older men where the experience of the years lead older men to endure and persevere the trials which come their way. That's part of being patient. Think about Job. Think about the example of Job when you think of perseverance. Sometimes we're going to face difficult times in life. We may face health problems. We may face financial loss. We may face the loss of a loved one. Older men need to prove that I'm not going to quit every time something bad happens. I'm not going to give up on God and give up on his church because something negative has happened. I'm going to work through those problems and I'm going to endure. That's an example that older men need to set. And so that's the older men who are adorning the doctrine. This is what we need to see older men living. The younger generation of men need to see men who are made of this kind of metal. Now, the next category, if you will, that he turns to is the older women. What do we need to see from older women who are adorning the doctrine? Look at Titus 2, 3, and 4. Older women, he says, likewise, should be reverent in behavior, not slanderers, not given to much wine, teachers of good things, that they admonish the young women. Okay? So let's walk through this for a moment. Reverent in behavior. Someone needs to recognize because of your behavior, and behavior refers to a lot of things, a very broad word. It refers to how you talk to people. It refers to how you carry yourself. It refers to the dress, the clothes that you wear. All those things indicate a reverent behavior. People need to see by your behavior that you're holy, that you're set apart. You're not trying to be like the world. You're willing to be different from the rest of the world. That's something that younger women need to see from older women. The next phrase is not slanderers there. Not slanderers. That means don't falsely accuse people of things, for one. That could be slander. When we say that someone has done something that they haven't really done, be careful with your tongue. Don't ruin the reputations of others. And let me tell you something. Part of slander can very well be gossip. And just because something is true doesn't mean everybody needs to know about that either. Every once in a while, be the type of person that someone can confide in and can trust. That's part of setting the example as an older woman. Don't be a slanderer. Watch your tongue very carefully as an older woman and set the example that you want the younger generation of women to imitate. Not giving them much wine. Stay away from intoxicants. Okay, that's the idea. Things that alter the mind. Be teachers of good things. Okay, teachers of good things. The following context is going to tell us who the older women should be teaching. Who is that? Younger women. And so what's something that you need to do as an older Christian? Well, you need to be teaching some of the younger Christians some good things, things that are helpful to them. Be a mentor to them. Our younger ladies need that. I'll tell you, my daughters need that from older women, and they've had that from a lot of women, but they need that. You know, I tell you what, mom really appreciates it when she gets a little bit of backup from some of the older sisters in the church every once in a while. It's good for my kids to hear it from somebody besides me. As a preacher, I appreciate a little backup every once in a while. I appreciate when my elders preach on things that I've been preaching about, because I know they've got my back. They're going to be preaching from the same word I'm preaching from, and people need to hear from them and not just me. And as parents, every once in a while, it's good to be able to say to your kids, see, I'm not the only one. There's other parents who parent this way too. And there's other parents who see this as well. And so be someone teaching good things to the younger women. It even says admonish the young women. That's a word that means warn them. It's your job as an older Christian, when you see something or you see that maybe a younger woman is entering into dangerous territory, that you very kindly and compassionately and tactfully warn younger women if you're seeing red flag behaviors from afar. I don't think that means be suspicious of younger women. I think it just means be vigilant for your fellow sisters. And there's a difference in those two things. And so older women need to be people who are not given much wine, teachers of good things, and admonishing the young women. Well, what do we need to admonish the young women about? Well, that's where we get to our next category here. Titus chapter 2, verses 4 and 5. It says, admonish the young women to love their husbands. Now, how do I do that? Well, if you see a young woman who's constantly complaining and criticizing and nagging, venting about their husband, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of love there, then maybe you need to let them know. You better be careful about constantly complaining about your husband. Love your husband. It doesn't seem to exhibit love when you go around from house to house and person to person and you're constantly complaining about them. You need to love your husband. That phrase, love your husband, means to be fond of him. It means to be affectionate as a wife to your husband. It indicates affection. Mutual love in marriage is going to bring comfort. It's going to bring peace to the home. And so we need to encourage that in younger women. Next phrase that's used is to admonish the young women to love their children. Love their children. Again, love there means be fond of. Be fond of your children. You would think that's a natural thing. But if you think that, you haven't raised teenagers yet. Do I keep saying this? All right. To love your children. Be fond of them. Some people love their friends more than their own kids. They like shopping more than they like their own kids. Some people like their dogs more than their own kids. You need to be fond of your own children and learn to love them. And sometimes doesn't that mean we love people when sometimes they're not very lovable? That includes your own kids sometimes. Love your children. And so pay attention to them. Be discreet. Be discreet. You need to talk to young women about being discreet. And young women need to hear this. What does it mean to be discreet? Well, it means to be self-controlled, to be sound in mind. And the idea of being safe in mind is the idea of being balanced in your thinking. Don't always be in an uproar. Okay? Have you ever known a woman who's always loud, always complaining, and always barking? And that's not really being discreet. That's actually making a scene. Don't be the woman that's making a scene and always has to be the center of attention. Okay? Be discreet. Be self-controlled. But let me notice this next phrase. I think it's pretty important. It's be chaste. Be chaste. What's that word mean? It means to be clean. It means to be innocent. It means to be modest. It means to be perfect. Okay? Younger women, don't be a flirt. Make sure that you place boundaries on your relationships. Don't dress so that you can turn heads. That's the opposite of chaste. All right? That's the opposite. I don't care what our culture is saying. You dress in a way to turn heads, and this can be a man and a woman, by the way. Men can do the same thing. But if you're dressing in a way to try and turn other people's heads and to get looks, that's the opposite of chaste. That's a warning sign. That's a red flag behavior. It's not what's encouraged here in this passage. Modesty is part of chastity. Then the next phrase is the phrase homemakers, to be homemakers, okay? Workers at home. I don't necessarily think that means that you've got to do all the work in the home. The word is home manager. Let me tell you something. My wife, she's the home manager. And when my wife says, hey, those pictures need hung, I go do it. Sometimes that means she manages me a little bit. The yard needs mowed, I do it. Sometimes she tells the kids, clean your room. Doesn't mean she does all the work. It means that you just oversee some of the work being done and just delegate the work if that is what needs to happen. But how you take care of your home and your family says something about whether you're applying the doctrine to your life. It says something about you taking pride in your home and your family. Notice also the phrase good. Some render this as the word kind. In 1 Peter 2:18, it talks about being obedient to our bosses, even if they're harsh. And that word harsh in that passage is the opposite of this word. And so we need to not be harsh with our tongues. We need to be good and kind. So how do you speak to others? How do you speak to others? Do you speak to others with kindness? Do you speak to your husband with kindness? Have you ever heard a woman talk to her husband and thought, well, I need to walk away because this is kind of embarrassing? Now, and I've heard men talk to their wives in such a way where I think, I need to walk away because you're about to get slapped. Like, you're not being kind. Be kind. Be good. How do you talk to other Christians? Be good. How do those conversations go? How do you talk to your Bible class teachers? I've been in Bible classes where I felt I was being taught to very rudely. And so we had to have a little conversation afterwards. Like, we need to tone this down a little bit. Okay? Be kind in how we speak to each other. I love you. Please, do you love me? Because I'm not feeling the love right now. Be kind. How do you talk to people on social media? You know, this being kind and good doesn't stop when you get on Facebook. I've seen Christians who are just sweethearts when we're at church, and then they get on social media and it's like they're pounding the keyboard, all caps, exclamation points, and they just get rude and nasty all of a sudden. It doesn't stop when you're on social media where you can stop being kind to people through text. Would you be described as kind in your tone? And then obedient to their own husbands. That may not be a popular one in our culture today. The word may be better rendered as subject rather than obedient. But in God's family paradigm, there is an order to how things are to function and how things are to work. There's that order in the workplace. There's that order in the home. There's an order that God sets in the church. Our God is a God of order. Our God is a God that's logical. In the military, you have a rank in the military. That doesn't necessarily mean that the general is smarter than you as the lesser ranking person. That's not what that means at all. It just means that in order for us to function as a unit, then there has to be a paradigm. There has to be an order, and it has to be respected for the well-being of the home. And that was something that Paul encouraged Titus to be teaching. Well, let's go back to younger men. So we were at older men, but Paul jumps to older women, then he moves to younger women, and then he turns to younger men. And so what is it that Paul thought Titus needed to be teaching younger men so they could wear the doctrine, so they could be living it? Well, he says in verses 6-8, likewise, exhort the young men to be sober-minded in all things. Show yourself to be a pattern of good works in doctrine, showing integrity, reverence, incorruptibility, sound speech that cannot be condemned, that one who is an opponent may be ashamed, having nothing evil to say of you. All right, sober-minded. We've already seen that in a previous one. It's the idea of balance. So young men, you're going to have days when others disappoint and discourage you. That's going to happen in life, in all the relationships of life at some point. You're also going to have days that are full of joy and full of happiness, where people have patted you on the back and you've been successful and you've been promoted, and those are great days, and you're going to feel like you're on top of the world. Don't let it turn you into an arrogant braggart when those good days come, and don't get yourself all down in the dumps, feeling sorry for yourself when those bad days come. Stay level. The next phrase, a pattern of good works. Younger men, a pattern of good works. What does your typical daily works look like? I know a lot of young men, when they aren't at school or have some responsibility, they sleep in half the day. They're playing video games all night long. Their room looks like a tornado hit it. They stay up all night watching TikTok pranks and reels. Life is so short. And if you're living your life through other people on social media and video games, you're wasting it. You're wasting it. Fill your life with good works. Quit living your life through other celebrities and other people who are just trying to get famous off of enough views and trying to go viral. Quit living your life through them and live your life and make an impact upon other people in your life. That might be your own family. It might be your neighbors. It's people in your community. It's your school. It's your workplace. But get up early, clean up, work diligently, volunteer, get off the couch and live a life that is a pattern for other people to live. It's a blessing to this world. When I was being raised, my parents kind of had a philosophy, and the philosophy was just simply this: idle hands are the devil's workshop. And so I worked constantly. I worked. Didn't always like that, but I understand it now. I get it now. Okay. I worked my way through college. I went to college 4 days a week. I worked landscaping all day on Friday. I worked on a sermon all day on Saturday. I preached that sermon on a Sunday, and I did it over and over again for 5 years until I became a preacher. And I've always been someone who worked. I don't want to sit around and be lazy. I've volunteered in my community. I've been head of the park and tree board in my community. I've worked that. I've been a travel director for our soccer club. I've volunteered. I've mowed people's yards. I've substituted at the school. I volunteered at the school. I've been on school bus trips. I mean, I like to stay busy helping people. I don't want to sit around because I want to make something of my life. And I want to set an example for my son to follow and other young men, that this is how you can make a difference. Haven't always been perfect in that, but I just want to be for people to be able to say, you made a difference. Yeah, I love what Nehemiah said at the end of the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah wasn't perfect, right? There was times people were trying to come work on the Sabbath, and he pulled their hair and cursed at them to get them out. Nehemiah was not a perfect man, but Nehemiah did a whole lot of good. And at the end of the book, he just simply says, remember me for good. Please, God, remember me for good. And that's my philosophy in life. It should be, I think, every young man who's wanting to be a God-pleasing person, your philosophy in life. I hope that even though I don't do perfect things, and even though I fall short sometimes and I make mistakes, I hope that my wife, when it's all said and done, can remember me for good, that her life was better because I was her husband. And I hope that the churches that I've worked, even if I'm here a week or if I was there for 15 years, I hope that they can just say, you did good here. And I appreciate what you did during the time that you were here. And the community that I lived in and the neighbors that I lived next door to and the schools that I've worked at and every organization I've been a part of, we were glad that you were a part of our organization. Young men need to be a pattern for good works where they can say, I wish I had a worker like that guy. I wish I had a neighbor like him. I wish I had a husband like him. Don't covet, all right? You don't covet. Be content with yours. But be a pattern of good works. Probably shouldn't have gone there. In doctrine, show integrity. Next phrase. In doctrine, show integrity. Sometimes, young men, you're going to be teachers. You're going to be teaching people the gospel. Show integrity in how you teach it. Our teaching should elicit a sense of seriousness. We're serious about what we teach. This is gravely important. I have a respect. When I pull out this word of God, we can joke and we can have fun, but when I pull this out, I'm serious about it. It's serious for you. And I want you to be serious about it. In doctrine, show some integrity. Don't be offensive. Don't be flippant about the word of God. Be serious about it. Doctrine, showing integrity. I think that also means when it comes to doctrine, making sure that we're sticking to the doctrine. Don't start teaching our opinions. Don't start teaching things that are speculative and assumptive. Teach what you know is true from the word. Bible classes should be about Bible, not about assumptions and speculations, not about did Did Adam have a belly button or not? Okay. I literally sat in a class one time, I kid you not, where the question was asked at the start of class, I wonder why it was that Methuselah lived to be so old. And they talked about the whole class. I don't know. Nobody knows. Why are we talking about this? We don't know. Stick to the book. Stick to the word. Stick to what you know. This is sure. Sound speech that cannot be condemned. Next phrase here. Watch what you say. Watch how you say it. And watch the context in which you say it. Be careful about what you say. Well, here's the last section of Titus 2. And then the lesson is yours. Workers need to be adorning the doctrine too. Look at Titus chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Now, the New King James translates bondservants as bondservants. I think they were softening what really meant slaves. We obviously don't live in a culture where there's slavery in our country, but we do have employee-employer relationships. And in those employee relationships, employees, just substitute employees for servants or slaves, because we all need to be respectful of our bosses or masters. We need to be obedient to their own masters. Be well-pleasing in all things. Not answering back, not pilfering, but showing all good fidelity, that they may adorn the doctrine of God, our Savior, in all things. All right. I need to be obedient to my master, obedient to my boss. That's the first thing. God loves the whole world. And what that means is, for us, even in our workplaces, is that every single person in the whole world is a prospect for God's love and for the salvation he offers, including your coworkers. Now, you can teach your coworkers the gospel all you want and invite them to church and invite them to study the Bible, but if you don't live by it, and if you're not respecting their position over you at work, and as you come across as disrespectful, then don't expect them to respect what you teach about respecting the Lord. Respect your bosses. You'll have a much better influence upon them if you do. Notice to be well-pleasing. Now, the goal in some workplaces for some workers is, how can I do the least amount of work and get paid the most for it? How can I take the most from the company and give the least to the company? But the way our attitude should be is, we should be asking, what will make my boss and my coworkers and my company happy, and what will make them profitable? Because I want to be well-pleasing to them. So often we're as lazy as we can possibly get away with. What's going to benefit them? If I adorn the doctrine, I'm looking out for others' good, just as Christ looked out for my good, and that includes my employer. And so I'm well-pleasing to them. Also, not answering back. Don't be the person at work who's known as the back talker. We all know who that guy or gal is at work. Never wants to do what they're told, always talking back, always has an excuse for why they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Just be quiet and work. Don't answer back. That means be quiet and do what you're told to do. Do it with a smile, and I would suggest go the extra mile. You get told to do something, do it to the very best of your ability and impress your boss. They will appreciate that. Not pilfering. I think that's an important one, because there's a lot of different ways we can steal from the boss. When I was in Kokomo, we had a big Chrysler plant there. That was the big employer. They made the Chrysler transmissions there in Kokomo. And so what they had to do, though, eventually in that plant, was they had to put metal detectors at all the doors. And the reason why they had to put metal detectors at all the doors is because so many workers were coming in and stealing tools and walking out with them to have their own toolboxes, that they were having no tools. People just kept stealing. So they have metal detectors so that you can quit stealing tools. That's pilfering, stealing tools. My parents have a landscaping company. I think I've mentioned that to you. They had a worker one time who stole someone's phone. And of course, they gave a lot of the supervisors phones so that they could call in if there was a problem and things like that. Well, they happened to see this coworker steal the phone. They have cameras all over their barns. So they saw him pick it up, put it in his pocket. And so they bring him in after they've researched this and gone through all the camera and the tape and stuff for a couple of days. Say, hey, we just want to know, have you seen this phone? Because, this guy lost his phone and can't find it. Did you know anything about that? No, I don't know anything about that. They dialed the phone number. It rang in his pocket. Are you sure you don't know anything about that? He was fired, right? That's pilfering. You stole somebody's phone. They've had guys who parked the truck, left the crew on a property, and they went somewhere to go eat. They've actually had guys that their girlfriend came and picked them up while the rest of the crew was working and took them out for a little while. You're stealing. You're clocked in and you're not working. You're stealing. That's pilfering. And that's not going to set a good example if you're a Christian. I've known people who have said, well, I'm going to be there an hour late, but could you clock me in? You're not working. Why would you clock someone in? I'm going to leave an hour early. Could you clock me out? That's pilfering. You're stealing time. That's exactly what this passage says not to do. Show all good fidelity is the last phrase there. And fidelity is the same term as found in the fruit of the Spirit for faithfulness. Would you be described as a faithful worker? I'll tell you, there's huge worker shortages, at least where I'm at in Indy. There was worker shortages in Columbus. There's a now hiring sign everywhere. It's just permanently out in front of buildings right now. And employers are having to put up with workers who show up, 2 out of 5 days a week because they can't find faithful workers. Don't have that reputation if you're a Christian. Be someone who shows up on time when you're supposed to be there every time, because that's part of adorning the doctrine. These qualities that are seen in believers across the spectrum, that's how you give the doctrine life. You take the dry bones of God's word, you bring them to life in your mind, your eyes, your ears, your hands, your feet, and your body. And so take a look at this last phrase here. Titus 2, verses 11 through 14, I think just summarizes what Paul is encouraging Titus to teach. He says, the grace of God has appeared, bringing salvation for all people, training us. You know what? I haven't been that perfect younger man or older man sometimes. God's grace is training me to do better. It's training us to renounce ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in the present age, waiting for our blessed hope, the appearing of the glory of our great God and Savior Jesus Christ, who gave himself for us to redeem us from all lawlessness and to purify for himself a people for his own possession who are what? Zealous for good works. Don't be known by your bad works. Don't be known for your bad reputation. Be people who, now that you're in Jesus Christ, I want to be known as being a person zealous for good works, living for the Lord. And so are you imitating and embodying the source of the doctrine? That's Jesus Christ. Are you adorning the doctrine? We sing this song sometimes, and I meant to request this, but forgot to do that. Maybe you don't know it, but maybe you do. But the lyrics from this song mean a lot to me. We are the only Bible the careless world will read. Isn't that true? There's a lot of people out there, they're not reading this text. So where are they going to learn what a Christian's like? They're going to learn it from you. We are the only Bible the careless world will read. We are the sinner's gospel. We are the scoffer's creed. We are the Lord's last message given in deed and in word. And what if the print is crooked? And what if the type is blurred? I want people to get a clear picture of Jesus Christ when they look at me, when they look at you and my brothers and sisters in Christ. I want them to see you adorning the doctrine, not because you want them to be impressed with you, because we want them to be impressed with the Jesus Christ who shines his light through you. That's what matters, because that's going to open up doors and opportunities for you to share Christ with them. And so when people see, hear, observe you in your home, social media, workplace, here in this building, do they see a person who's putting Christianity into action? Do they still see some of that old, prideful, sinful man alive in you? I want them to see the beauty of Jesus Christ. And if that's what you want as you start your journey with him, we've all failed. We've all messed that up. We've not always been perfect examples, but you can start fresh. And God gives you the opportunity to be forgiven of those past sins and start living for him with the new creature, the new man. You can start that today. If you failed in some way and you need forgiveness, whether it be by obeying the gospel or confessing your sins so that you can be start on a new journey, we encourage you to come while we stand and while we sing.